Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kayla Stukins. So today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different on my channel. This is going up on a Saturday, whereas most of the time I upload Mondays. Now they're moved to Wednesdays, whatever. I'm going to be posting new videos every Wednesday and Saturday, at least every Wednesday, and Saturdays are going to be like a bonus kind of video if I can think of an idea. So today I'm going to be doing a video where I basically talk about all of the books that I have either gotten from my school or stolen from my high school, hence the name. So if you are at my school and you see this, I didn't steal them. Most of them I was able to take. So anyway, so the first book I'm going to be talking about is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. So this is a book I read last year or 2 years ago actually, in 2019. In 2019-2020 for my senior year of high school. So this is a dual book, so it has The Time Machine and The Invisible Man, but I only read The Time Machine, so I'm going to be talking about that one. And actually, I was able to find my essay we had to write about the book, so I'm going to talk about what the book's about. I'm going to be reading some part of my essay, so this is going to be the longest part of the video where I talk about this book, but if you want to skip, I'm going to put little time slots for different books. So let me just get my little phone out and I will be reading it for you. So, in The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, the narrator travels to a time 800,000 years in the future. In this world, he expects advancement and prosperity, but instead is met with dystopia. He finds a sharp divide between the two social classes, which is caused by the built-up cruelty perpetrated on the lower class, now called the Morlocks, by the higher class, the Eloi. This cruelty not only causes division between the two classes, but it causes the higher class, the Eloi, or the Eloi, I don't know how to pronounce it, the Eloi, to become so complacent in their superiority that the lower class, the Morlocks, are able to influence their own fear and cruelty on the Eloi. Wells uses the topic of cruelty to warn against the division between groups of people and the tendency to become complacent. He says that if cruelty and oppression exist and persist, the divide between groups will grow so large that it will not be able to unite. The narrator describes the differences between the two classes and how it relates to Darwin's theory of evolution. He explains his theory that the Eloi, or the Eloi, and the Morlocks were created because of the social class division at the time. He says that the Eloi are descendants of top-tier workers, white-collar workers, the rich guys, and the Morlocks are descendants of the poor workers, or coal miners who were underground, which is why in the book they live underground. He soon realizes that the Eloi, who are supposed to be superior, are indeed afraid of the Morlocks and wonders why. The Eloi had become so complacent in their superiority that they began to see them as less than human, which indeed turned the Morlocks into less than human creatures. This in turn made the Eloi, the higher class, more dim-witted and weak, as the narrator described them. They had believed to reach such a perfect utopia that they stopped attempting to progress and solve their differences with the Morlocks. The continuous cruelty and oppression of the Morlocks by the Eloi turned the Morlocks into these kind of creepy creatures of the night who only came out of hiding to kill and eat the Eloi, which in turn led the Eloi to be scared of the creatures called the Morlocks. Again, you see, it's kind of like a never-ending cycle. These people oppress these people, which turn these people into scary monsters, which eat these people, which further perpetrates or persists or adds to the level of fear from the upper class. See? Never-ending cycle. Wells uses this division between the Morlocks and the Eloi to kind of an open message to the world that we should not let differences persist and warn against being complacent in what we have and always seeking to reach another level of progress. He shows how this oppression is not only harmful to the oppressed, but is also harmful to the oppressors. This kind of story takes place in a obviously very fantasy kind of setting. This is not existing where there's a sharp contrast in two species of the human race. They're all human, but they're very different because of Darwin's theory. His book warns us not to accept the facade of a perfect utopia and continue to fight for progress, and also warns us not to stay complacent and not fight against our oppressors and always seek to unite and to solve our differences and our problems, because if we don't, it's only going to lead to something worse. When the narrator first arrived in this book, on the surface level, it seems like a perfect world. These people are so happy and content with where they are that they don't fight against anything. They're just completely okay. But as he starts to dive in deep, there's two revelations, I guess. The second one is that it's not as perfect as you think. The Morlocks are out to kill you, out to eat you, out to just be scary. They seem like actually scary. The second revelation is that the Morlocks are not evil solely for being evil, that it was the Eloy's own oppression of the Morlocks that in turn flipped the script. Now the Morlocks were being the ones that made the Eloy scared of the Morlocks, of the lower class. And it's a really interesting, obviously fantastical way to warn against the division of two groups of people, or just people in general. But it is a rather interesting one, and I really, really enjoyed this book. So yeah, sorry if this is all over the place for this book, but I would recommend reading or listening to the audiobook. I found a really good one on YouTube if you wanted to read it or listen to it. I started reading it myself. It's kind of small. I mean, this is just one edition of the book, but there are big words, and I had to look up, have a thesaurus, have a dictionary right beside me to look up the words. But I enjoyed it. I loved the overall themes and concepts. I hated, it's kind of that thing where you have to read a book for school and you don't want to read it because you feel like you're being forced to read it, but I really enjoyed this book. I would recommend it to people. Okay, so now we're moving on to the next book. So the next book is actually a screenplay by Arthur Miller. It is The Death of a Salesman. So I read this, I believe, also in my senior year. In my project, I had to also have someone in my life, so I had my father read this book with me. He didn't much enjoy it. I think he either listened to an audiobook to finish the rest, or he just didn't finish the rest and looked up the ending or how the themes of it. But I actually really enjoyed this. So we follow the story of a man named Willie, a salesman, and his last, I think 24 hours or 48 hours, maybe, I can't remember, his last days before his death, and he suffers from a lot of illusions or delusions, or just he sees visions of his past trauma or his past mistakes, the people who did him wrong, the people he did wrong, and he really reflects on his life. It deals with themes such as capitalism and the American dream, and how the American dream is not always what we perceive it as, and is not always the shining glimmer of hope that we think it is. So Willie equates success with being well-liked. He says it many times that to be successful, you have to be well-liked, but he doesn't take into a lot of other factors that make you successful. I can't remember a lot about it, but I know he always struggles with his shortcomings and not being as successful as he might like, and other people in his life are more successful. And he sees there's this one character, I can't remember his name, but Willie doesn't really like him because he thinks he's dumb or thinks he's lame or just boring, and he doesn't dress right, you know what I mean? And he constantly belittles him, even though he's just a human too, I really enjoyed it. It's really short, and you can honestly read it really quickly. I loved the scenes with Willie and his wife as they're kind of fighting. She's the perfect trophy wife who stays home and, cooks for him, just a stay-at-home mom. Has two sons. I think one, his brother or even one of his sons is estranged, doesn't talk to him anymore because of Willie's beliefs and stuff, and one of the sons went off in a route that Willie didn't like, a job he didn't like. This is a really interesting screenplay, and we did it in my English class. So I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. Read it. The next book I had, this is actually from middle school, so I'm sorry I lied to you, but it is Night by Elie Wiesel. Sorry. I'm bad at pronouncing names, as we know. It is a story of the Holocaust and a story of this man as he, gets taken and sees his family die and, escapes. This book was originally in Yiddish. I looked it up, and it was originally in Yiddish, but his wife translated it to English and kind of fixed up some of the details. I never read the original edition, but I did read this and I've kept it since middle school. I really enjoy it. It's really sad, obviously, because this is a real thing that happened to a lot of people. I'm going to read a little excerpt from it, or just from the back. Ellie was a teenager when he and his family were taken from their home in 1994 to the Auschwitz concentration camp and then to Buchenwald. Night is a terrifying record of Elie Wiesel's memories of the death of his family, the death of his own innocence, and his despair as a deeply observant Jew confronting the absolute evil of man. So it's a really haunting and just honest story of someone who was going through that. I enjoyed it. I have nothing, I read it like 4 or 5 years ago, but I remember nothing but good things about it. The next book is Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. Haven't read all this yet. Read a little bit of it, loved it. Loved the little drawings in it. So this was not an assignment I had. I took this off of my English teacher's shelf. He let me have it. I don't know if he let me borrow it or if he'll let me like keep it, but I have it still, so sorry. But I've always been intrigued by Alice in Wonderland. I think I took it for like a weekend so I could read, so I'd have something to read, and never gave it back. But here it is. Very cute. Okay, sorry this video's all over the place. I was trying something new. Instead of doing like dedicated reviews to one book in particular in a video, I was trying to like kind of do something a little different. So we'll see if I like it. I don't know. The next book I have is another book I haven't read completely, but it's In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. So I've read a little bit of this, again, an audiobook. It is a story of a true crime sorry about that. A true crime, a very brutal murder, and this detective or this journalist or some investigative journalist something is trying to pick up the trail and solve the murder. I don't know if it was solved. I don't know what happened. I don't remember anything about it, but I really love true crime, and it's very beat up. As you can tell, there's tape on it because I ripped it taking it out of my backpack, and then I stole someone else's book that I found on the ground to give back to my teacher because I was embarrassed that I broke it. So, very sorry. This is the same English teacher that I took this from. I think this we were allowed to keep because it's the same English teacher, but I don't know. Don't care. I don't know. Don't know. So, the next book I have, I really, really loved. I read it in my freshman class. It wasn't English. It was like this thing they did in social studies where it was like freshman seminar, kind of introducing you to the school, introducing you to high school, and like grammar and stuff. I can't remember a lot about what it was, but I remember this book. This is called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. He is the author of another book called Tuesdays with Morrie. I don't know where I got this. Maybe I got it from my mom. Nope, it says my school district. Never mind. Covering my school district. Anyway, yeah, good book. Not that book. This is a good book. Let me talk a little bit about it. So this story follows a 83-year-old man called Eddie. He is working at a seaside kind of amusement park, like managing the rides and cleaning them and making sure they're up to code or whatever. And he is a retired war veteran. So one day, Eddie sees this ride. It's like one of those drop rides that you sit on and it like takes you up and it drops you. Is a young kid runs in front of it and she's about to die, and he throws himself in front of it and tries to save her. You don't find out until the very end of the book whether or not he actually saves her. So if you want to read this book, which I highly recommend, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's basically what you assume. He meets 5 people in heaven. Some people he doesn't even remember meeting or doesn't know the significance of why they're greeting him, but they kind of help him over to the other side and try to piece together the mystery of his life and the little things that maybe didn't make sense to him at the time. People he didn't really know what significance they would have in his life, but they greet him and welcome him into heaven, all while he's grappling with all the tragedies of his past. And it's a really, really good book. I very much love it. I can remember a couple of the people he meets. Some of them are really sad. Some of them are good memories. But I would recommend this. Read it. Just read it. It's good. So the final book is actually Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. So this book follows Siddhartha and his journey towards it's about Buddhism, the Buddha, because Siddhartha Gautama was the name, or is the name of the Buddha before it was changed, or like, oh my gosh, maybe retranslated, I can't remember. I don't know much about the Buddhist faith, but I did enjoy this. It's about reaching nirvana and I think it's like the 5 pillars of truth or 7 pillars of truth or whatever, and towards reaching a spiritual epiphany or a life, you know, a spiritual end. Really enjoyed it. He struggles a lot with the way people try to teach him. He really wants to be taught on his own as opposed to being taught by a teacher. He wants to experience things. That's how he wants to learn. I enjoyed it. Meets a lot of people on his path, or a couple people on his path. Made some good friends. I can't remember much of it because I read it my junior year, I think, but it's a good book and I love the little cover. I'd recommend it. Again, I mean, these are, of course, books that English teachers recommend, so if you don't really love books you think English teachers would recommend, then I would not recommend reading these books. But for the most part, they were very intriguing. I've always loved tales of history and of true stories. So, I mean, you could read any of these. They're very intriguing, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I would recommend them. Maybe start with, if you're going to start with one of these, I would recommend The Time Machine, because I love that one the most. And please listen to the audiobook. Please, because you will hate it if you don't listen to the audiobook. Maybe not, but I hated it. So, alright, I'm going to edit this video and see if I totally hate it. This will come up on Saturday, again at 2 p.m. So, like and subscribe if you want. If you don't, I mean, you don't know how, I mean, if you don't or don't know how, you don't have to. You know how YouTube works. But if you want to like and subscribe, I'm still doing the Harry Potter books on my channel. I have a bunch of books that I'm going to be doing in the next coming weeks. So, please subscribe. Bye. I love you. Love you, bye.